Welcome to Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. First ever official state visit by a Chinese president to Trinidad and Tobago. Agreements of trade and economic development signed during the visit of the People's Republic of China's president. And Speaker of the House describes Parliament as the seat of our democracy. Thank you for joining us. Despite mild showers, the arrival of Chinese President Xi Jinping to this country was incident-free and paved the way for an historic, productive and engaging weekend for Trinidad and Tobago and China.
His Excellency, President of China Xi Jinping, has completed his three-day state visit to Trinidad and Tobago. The visit to this country by President Jinping was the first of any Chinese president and provided an essential platform for strengthening bilateral relations. On Friday evening, the president and his wife arrived at Piarco International Airport with a full entourage of Chinese officials and media personnel. They were greeted by His Excellency President Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona and First Lady Mrs. Rima Carmona, Prime Minister the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and other members of government, including Chief Justice Ivor Archie. Despite the troubling weather, the Chinese president and his wife descended the plane safely to inspect a guard of honor and then were entertained by the playing of the national instrument. The Honorable Prime Minister expressed her pleasure in receiving the Chinese president on this historic occasion and gave an overview of what was expected to take place in the following days.
I think Trinidad is very honored at this time and very blessed, as I like to say, with this very historic visit. We look forward to some very fruitful discussions tomorrow. His Excellency came in, I'm told, a 17 to 20 hour flight straight in Trinidad and Tobago. This is his first visit out of his own region to the English-speaking Caribbean. Several CARICOM heads will be here on Sunday to meet with him and speak with him. So we look forward to very fruitful discussions. And I say again, Trinidad and Tobago is the place to be.
And we say the rain did not dampen your spirits?
Not at all. It was blessings for us, I think. And what was good, the rain started and it just stopped. So Trinidad is a great place to be.
Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar went on to note some of the topics of relevance that were to be discussed at the bilateral meeting.
On the agenda, we were looking at climate change, technical cooperation, trade, deepening our bilateral relationships with China, and a host of other matters. Energy, as you know, President of China said Trinidad and Tobago is a leader with respect to energy matters. We look forward to discussing those with them.
The Prime Minister expressed her confidence in an incident-free hosting of the Chinese president and said she was proud of Trinidad and Tobago on the momentous occasion. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
The Chinese president continued the second day of his state visit to Trinidad and Tobago by paying a courtesy call on President Carmona and engaging in bilateral talks with members of the government.
His Excellency, the President of China, Xi Jinping, continued his state visit to Trinidad and Tobago on Saturday as he paid a courtesy call on His Excellency, President Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona and First Lady Rima Carmona. The Chinese president and his wife were welcomed at the National Academy for the Performing Arts, Port of Spain, where several students from across Trinidad and Tobago accompanied President Carmona in receiving the Chinese delegation. During the courtesy call, President Jinping and his wife signed the visitor's book and exchanged pleasantries. Following this, the Chinese president entered the next leg of his visit. The diplomatic center was once again abuzz with activity as bilateral talks were to be held. On his arrival, President Jinping was greeted by the Honorable Prime Minister and members of her cabinet. Once inside, he signed the visitor's book and exchanged presents with Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar. The diplomatic center had on display several cultural items such as Trinidad and Tobago's national instrument and even some Chinese characters. The Chinese delegation and representatives of Trinidad and Tobago's government then engaged in bilateral talks where several key issues were raised. It was at the news conference which followed that the Chinese president revealed it was agreed to actively advance cooperation in key areas of energy, minerals and infrastructure development, and also to advance cooperation in new energy, telecommunications and agriculture. Prime Minister Pasabi Sessa said Trinidad and Tobago views China as a very key business partner and a potential new market for local energy products and for alternative energy research. She announced that the Chinese president agreed to send to the Caribbean 100 volunteer medical professionals over the next 3 years. Several memoranda of understanding were signed during the bilateral meeting, one of which was signed between a Chinese waterproofing firm named Beijing Oriental Yuhong and the Lake Asphalt Company of Trinidad to build a plant to produce roofing and other waterproofing products. Trinidad plans to open an embassy in Beijing later this year, and Prime Minister Pasabi Sessa will make an official visit to China in November. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
When we come back, the Senate President describes Parliament as the seat of our democracy. Chinese President Xi Jinping may pay a courtesy visit to the President of the Senate, Mr. Timothy Hamel-Smith, and Speaker of the House, Mr. Wade Mark, in Parliament. In greeting the Chinese President, Senate President Hamel-Smith welcomed him to what he described as the seat of our democracy.
A call for greater exchange and ties between China and Trinidad and Tobago were expressed when President Xi Jinping met with Parliament leaders of the Caribbean. During his tour of the Trinidad and Tobago Lawmaking House Parliament, the Chinese president met with House Speaker Wade Mark, together with Senate President Timothy Hamel-Smith. President Jinping expressed the need for the two countries' legislative bodies to meet as a sign of deepening relations between both nations. Via a translator, the President of the Senate, in welcoming the Chinese president, says the deepening of bilateral relations will go down in the book of history.
You can be assured that our country will continue to support China as it aspires to become one of the emerging countries at the forefront of the global nations of the world.
House Speaker Wade Mark later took the Chinese guest to the chambers, where he explained Trinidad and Tobago's use of the bicameral system in its lawmaking process.
We have two houses or bicameral system made up of the House of Representatives, elected by the people, and the Senate, which is appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, and by the President himself when he makes appointments. The proceedings of our Parliament are carried live into people's homes and it streams on the World Wide Web.
并且我们从两边看这个实况，都会进行实况转播，所以人们在自己的家中都可以用看，同时呢，也会直接传到网上。
And just ahead of you, there is where our Hansard or bulletin reporters sit to record the contributions of the various members.
The Chinese president was presented with a special painting and the coat of arms of Trinidad and Tobago. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
Agreements of trade and economic development were signed during the visit of China's president. One of the highlights was the unveiling of the plaque at the Couva Children's Hospital construction site. The project is said to be one of the signature joint ventures between Trinidad and Tobago and China.
The Chinese government will lend aid to the construction of the Couva Children's Hospital. In visiting the construction site of the hospital, the official commencement of the project was commemorated by the unveiling of the plaque by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Housing Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal, in his brief remarks at the ceremony, described the facility as a testament of the shared relations this country held with China.
We are particularly pleased that in developing this project, great emphasis was placed and supported by our Chinese counterparts on ensuring that at the same time the development needs of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago were met. It will evolve in the minds and hearts of all of us as an eloquent national landmark in which the people of China and Trinidad and Tobago can take enormous pride. It will be a tribute to China's friendship and your continuing quest to help small states such as ours to make a great leap forward.
The project will include in its plans the construction of a burns unit and helipad for emergencies. Minister Munilal says the hospital will serve as a most important facility to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
The full capability hospital and training facility has been thoughtfully designed to be world-class. It is a collaboration of our vision, generous support from the People's Republic of China, and the construction expertise of the Shanghai Construction Group. Nestled harmoniously among these rolling hills of Couva in Trinidad, far away from your homeland.
同时，这片建筑将是在我们特立尼达和多巴哥非常美丽的群山中建造的这么一个非常和谐的项目，离贵国的国土十分遥远。
In the near future, this complex will stand majestically as a striking legacy of the kindness of the government of China and the vision of the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
The hospital will be located off the southbound lane of the Solomon Hochoy Highway, Couva near Presal, and will occupy over 60 acres of former Carnegie lands. While Shanghai Construction will build the hospital, its design, finance, construct model will be supervised by state agency UDICOT. In March 2012, Prime Minister Kamal Prasad Visesa turned the sod for the hospital. Kimberly Ram Kalawan, News 4.
When we come back, the First Lady of China visits the Lady Ho-Choi home. Stay with us. The First Lady of China, Peng Liyuan, brought some good news to those at the Lady Ho-Choi home when she visited on Saturday.
Chinese First Lady Peng Liyuan visited the Lady Ho-Choi home in Cocorito on Saturday as part of an official state visit to Trinidad and Tobago by President of China Xi Jinping. There, the First Lady, accompanied by First Lady of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Rima Carmona, and the former First Lady, Zaleha Hassan Ali, got an opportunity to interact with the staff and children who reside at the home. The visit fell on the same day that China celebrated International Children's Day, and the Chinese First Lady expressed how touched she was following the time she spent with the children. While addressing those at the home, she revealed that the Chinese government had decided to donate 1 million yuan worth of material, which estimates just over Trinidad and Tobago $1 million. The home, which also serves as a school for children with mental and physical disabilities, has had a long presence in Trinidad and Tobago and has been a source of refuge and hope for countless children. The Chinese First Lady said she had heard of the home back in China and echoed the sentiments of many that children with disabilities need love too. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
China's First Lady got a lesson on the hummingbird when she visited Yaret, home of the hummingbird, located in the mountains of Maracas. During her visit, she was accompanied by First Lady Rima Carmona, along with Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Dukaran's wife, Shirley Dukaran.
China's First Lady Peng Liyuan, wife of President Xi Jinping, got a lesson on hummingbirds during her visit to Trinidad. On Saturday morning, while her husband visited Parliament chambers, the Chinese First Lady, together with First Lady Rima Carmona, visited a Yaret home of the hummingbird, a habitat located at the foothills of the Eltakush mountain, the second highest in the country. Their retired professor, University of the West Indies agrimony professor Theodore Ferguson, explained through a translator the significance of the hummingbird to the island.
Trinidad and Tobago is called the land of the hummingbird. The first people of this country were the Amerindians. And to an Amerindian, the hummingbird is a sacred creature. The souls of the dead ancestors, or the spirits of the dead ancestors. And they gave the name Airi to Trinidad. Airi. Yeah. Airi. Airi. Airi means hummingbird. Yeah, Amerindian word for hummingbird. Hence Trinidad and Tobago became known as land of the hummingbird.
The birds, which are said to be native to the Western Hemisphere, were described as unique to the region. However, Professor Ferguson gave a brief lesson on the species as the ladies listened intently to his lecture.
We have 17 different types of hummingbirds. And of those 17, there's one in Tobago, which is our sister island, that we do not have in Trinidad. So in Trinidad, we have 16. And of the 16 that we have in Trinidad, we get 13 of them to visit us here. And that makes us special in terms of the number of species that we have. When light hits the birds, they glow and they look like jewels. So people have admired hummingbirds for a long time because of that quality. Yeah. In fact, people so admired hummingbirds that they made it into jewelry, and it became part of the fashion industry in Europe in the 19th century.
The facility also serves as an art gallery, to which First Lady Luang presented a picture made out of Chinese silk to the professor. In return, a similar gesture was made as she too received a painting of the ruby topaz hummingbird.
This is the most beautiful hummingbird in the world, and I trust this will help you to remember your visit to Yerrat and to Trinidad and Tobago. We are truly honored by your presence here today.
Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. Trinidad and Tobago and the People's Republic of China are both guaranteed a great future should they continue working together. This is the message being delivered by the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
The people of any country with a history as great as China's must have a great future. And the people of any country with a potential as great as Trinidad and Tobago must also have a great future.
President Carmona makes the assertion while delivering the feature address at a state banquet held in honor of the official state visit to this country by the President of China, His Excellency Xi Jinping, and his wife, First Lady Madame Peng Liyuan. President Carmona and his wife, First Lady Rima Harrison Carmona, hosted the banquet at the Trinidad Hilton Hotel. Noting that the two countries have been allies for more than 40 years, President Carmona says he believes the bonds that unite both countries keep growing stronger with time. He assures state officials from both countries that active cooperation will lead to an improved quality of life for citizens of both nations.
It is the common desire of the two countries, Trinidad and Tobago and the Chinese peoples, to enhance their mutual understanding and friendship and promote the deepening of relations between our two countries. Mr. President, I can assure you that the Republic will work unswervingly towards the achievement of this goal in the economic, cultural, and political fields, in furtherance of the universal human values related to the improvement of the quality of life of individuals in society. I am pleased to say that the relations between Trinidad and Tobago and China rest on a very firm foundation. I am satisfied with the sustained development of our cooperation in various fields, and I hope and expect that we will deepen our collaboration to our mutual advantage.
President Carmona urges both nations to not let the previous diplomatic foundations laid between them go to waste. He adds that the state visit is one that should be celebrated, as it can only serve to benefit the people of China and Trinidad and Tobago.
We celebrate on this historic occasion the deep and abiding bond between our two republics and our two peoples. We recognize that tenacity of will, steadfastness of purpose, and clarity of vision on both sides, arrayed in service of our common interests and common hopes, have laid a solid foundation on which we may continue the work of constructing a lasting friendship and mutually beneficial cooperation and assistance that will redound to the benefit of the peoples of our two republics.
Prime Minister the Honorable Kamla Persad Bissessar is set to return the diplomatic gesture by making an official state visit to China in November of this year. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
The Chinese president's visit to Trinidad and Tobago has come to an end amid much pomp and ceremony. His stay lasted no more than 48 hours, and less than 24 hours after his departure, his visit is already bearing fruit.
The Chinese president's departure was one filled with fanfare, as the trip was a significant one. This had been the first time a Chinese leader had ever visited the country in an official capacity. The Chinese president was greeted at the airport by President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, His Excellency Anthony Carmona, Prime Minister the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and the majority of her cabinet members. Also there to add to the moment were members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force Band. Before boarding his official plane, President Xi Jinping listened to the band perform the national anthem of Trinidad and Tobago and said his goodbyes to this country's top state officials. Speaking before his departure, Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar announced plans for Trinidad to open an embassy in Beijing sometime this year. She adds this is essential as China is a key business partner and a potential new market for Trinidad and Tobago's energy products. China will also award Trinidad and Tobago a $250 million loan to build a children's hospital. In addition to this, the Chinese president also agreed to send 100 volunteer medical professionals to the region over the next 3 years in a bid to contribute to improving the quality of healthcare delivered in the region. His Excellency Xi Jinping is expected to next pay official visits to Costa Rica, Mexico, and finally end his tour of this region with a formal visit to the White House, where he will meet with U.S. President Barack Obama. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
And that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 Report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you for joining us.